All right, so this is the golden shiner that I tied, and I already got it wet just to make sure it was the profile I wanted before I started filming. But after you've tied the fly, it's going to be completely dry, and what we want to do is shape it. This will make a huge difference with the way it's going to look in the water and react in the water. And so you're just going to we're just going to pretend this is dry, and you just take it and you're just going to put it and dunk it into, fully submerged into a cup of water or whatever you got. Now I've already sort of shaped this one, so it's the feathers are wanting to move back into the direction that I want them. But normally it's going to come out, it's going to look something more along the lines of like this when it comes out. And what you can do is you can take your bodkin and start to maneuver the black for the back where you want it. Make sure it's sitting on the side of the hook that it's supposed to. If you have too much material along the back here, you can kind of take your bodkin and stroke this down. You see this piece here sticking out. It's just sitting on the wrong side, so we want to just want to do this to get everything aligned and orientated so that we have a good looking minnow at the end of the day. And then next, I find it easiest to just take a toothbrush and just lay this down and just start stroking this all to the back. And this kind of stuff will happen, and you'll see where the material was on the wrong side, which happens. It's not a big deal, but we want to correct it now and then let it dry in the form that we want it. And so, but doing this on a flat surface makes quite a bit more difference in the overall aspect of the shape of this fly. So we're just going to do this until we're happy with it. And you can kind of wring a little bit out if you need to or whatever. And if you have some stuff sticking out up front, you can either trim that away now or you can do it when we get it over to the vise. Now, kind of like I was mentioning a second ago, I really recommend getting these into the shape that you want them, that you're happy with. If you have to trim a little away here or there, you want to do it now while the profile is wet so that you can get it all back together and reformed. So what I would do, or what I do, is I'll just do this and then I'll let it sit like this overnight once I have the shape just how I want it. And it can take a few minutes, and the more you do this, the faster it's going to help it dry out, because you can see all this water that's coming off. And that's it for this part. And then when it's dry, and you don't absolutely have to wait till it's dry, but we're going to use some UV resin here. I'm going to go ahead and do this one while it's wet, just for time purposes. But when it's dry, this will all kind of open back up a little bit, and any of your super glues or UV resins are going to be willing to bond to this material much better than if it were wet. So anyway, now I'm just going to get this up to the vise. All right, so kind of again, I'd normally wait until this is dry so that I get more of this kind of stuff that wants to stick out and will be in the way, and I can trim it off accordingly, which makes it a little hard to do when it's wet, and also the fact that the glues don't like to bond to wet material all that well. But we're just going to go with it for the time constraints that I'm in. So now you've shaped the fly. You put it back in your vise. You just got to pick the eyes that you want to use, like a 5/32 or a 1/4 inch or 7/64. So I mean, it's really up to you, whatever you want to use. Now, when I attach these, I use gel Loctite super glue, and what I'll do is I'll literally put a dab directly on the side. So sometimes I'll turn the fly to the side so I can come straight down on top of it. And I put it directly to the bead and let it sit there. There's other adhesives you can use, epoxies and whatnot. This is just what I like to use. It works well. It's controlled easy. Doesn't make a mess. And so I'll just go ahead and place that eye on. You just want to make sure that you don't get your fingers in that glue. And then I'll turn it to the side to see if it's sitting directly on the side. I can do this other side. If you need to move it around, I recommend moving the eyes around with a bodkin as opposed to your fingers. If the glue gets on your fingers, it's very likely that it will stick to your fingers and it comes off. Now, you can get them off. The only downside is that it takes some of the shine and sheen away from the actual eye. So I'll let these set up for just a minute and dry, or partially dry. And then I'll move into some UV resin. And so sometimes, I'll give it 2, 3, 4 minutes to dry. So I do the UV resin in several applications. One, it just allows me to fill in the gaps a little bit better. You're not having the stuff run every which direction. But I'll just turn the fly so that it's facing directly up. And I start with just kind of gently filling in the gap along the top between the eyes, kind of down around front, maybe just a little bit. And I don't want to go too heavy. And then I'll flip it upside down to let it kind of come back down, let gravity kind of work for you here, and then I'll just hold the light in, or the UV light in place while that starts to set up and dry. And we'll use a lot of UV resin here for the head, or you can. You don't have to, but if you're going to use UV resin and make it more of a full minnow head, you're going to end up using a lot of resin. So sometimes the light just takes forever to cook it, so get it to the point where it'll hold up. And then you can take it outside and leave it in the sun for like 20 minutes, and it'll really help. So now that it's inverted again, I'll do the bottom side. I'll do it the same way, and just kind of fill all this in, and again coming down around to the front. And I'll flip it back over. Now the tough part is getting on the back side of the eyes. You can use a bodkin if you need to work back over there. One thing I'll do is I'll turn the fly on its side. I'll put the glue directly on top of the eye, or maybe slightly towards the back, and let it start to kind of run off the back down the side. And then I can take my bodkin and kind of maneuver it into place. This stuff just doesn't like sitting on wet material and bonding to it all that well. Can't imagine why, but it doesn't seem to want to bond very well. And then you can zap the eye. And we're just going to kind of go around and do the whole fly this way. If you've got some discoloring up front in the head, on the top that you don't like, after you've put your first coat of resin on, you can get a black Sharpie or some fingernail polish or whatever you want to do, and color it, let it dry, put more resin on, zap it. So just kind of the process of going through the UV resin, which normally I don't spend a lot of time on videos trying to go through and explain, but for a class video I will. Just in case some of you haven't done this before. But you want to kind of work in smaller areas and just a little at a time. If you get too much on there too quickly, it can really mess things up. Just make a big mess of stuff. Okay, now we'll kind of, whoops. We'll come back to the top, and this time I'm going to work onto the back just a little bit to kind of help with a sort of transitional look. Just to try to help that profile. And I'll bring some more down around the front. Now, it takes a little bit of practice to do this for most people typically before they get reasonably comfortable with doing UV on a larger scale. But if you kind of section things off where you do top, bottom, left, right, that kind of thing, it'll help out. And you can see how the head is starting to kind of take shape into like a minnow head. And some of this will depend on the size eyes that you have too. For some smaller eyes that aren't this large, the process is actually quite a bit easier. Goldfish typically don't have eyes this large. But getting a bulk of material for the classes and kits and everything in today's age is becoming increasingly difficult for the quantities that I need. Turn that back over. And we're just going to kind of keep working this until we have that minnow head right where we want it. And I'd say I'm getting pretty close here. It just takes a while to make all this happen. And then at the end of all of this, after my resin's dry, what I'll do is I'll take it, I'll re-wet the fly and let it dry overnight again. I know it seems kind of crazy, but every time you start to mess with the anything that involves the actual structure, which it kind of does because we're going back up onto it, it can sometimes affect the way that material wants to sit. And we're looking just about right now. I may add just a little bit more to the bottom there. But overall, I'm getting pretty happy with the shape of this. And so you just want to kind of go in smaller amounts until you have the shape that's going to work for you, and it looks like a minnow. Try to get a little bit more out front here. Yeah, and that's looking pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I've got a little tiny dent just above that one eyeball, but I think I'll let it ride. And you don't want to get too carried away doing this, but you want to have a good looking fly too, so don't be afraid to use some resin. So anyway, that's it. That's how you can tie a balanced golden shiner from start to finish. Sorry I had to put it on 2 videos. My internet connectivity was not allowing me to put the entire video that I shot up for whatever reason. It kept stalling and failing, so I had to break it into 2 parts and reshoot it. So that's why there's 2 parts to this one. And that's it for the jig session. So yeah, for those of you that followed along all 6 weeks, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. It's always a lot of fun putting these things together for you guys and to have you guys follow along. And we'll do it again. Summer's here, so we won't be doing anything again until September when we line up a whole new round and a whole new season of fly tying classes. And don't be afraid to let me know what you want to get into, and we'll try to tackle that if we can. Yeah, so take them out, have fun, and at the end of the day, if you learn something, that's really what it's about for me. And for those of you that have never used jig hooks, hopefully we explored enough in some different areas that we were able to maybe help lean you into using them a little bit more than otherwise you would. They're awfully popular now, and for good reason. So other than that, thanks to everybody that participated throughout the entire season. We grew a lot this year, and that's super cool. So other than that, as always, happy tying, everybody. Take care. We'll see you.